Good afternoon, Abbotsford residents. I'm Mr. Pelican. I'm running for your Commander-in-Chief of Abbotsford. And the first thing we're going to do under my ticket, my leadership, is remove the Abbotsford A.P.D. They're going to lean now on the RCMP. They're going to come out with advertising that we're in the middle of investigations. They're going to come out with stuff out there in the newspaper that they're got drinking and drivers. They're going to show that they need to shine. It's over. It's over. They were in organized crime. The election, threats on residents, but above all, ladies and gentlemen, the attack on the South Asians, Councillor Mogel, and what Henry Brown did to own that police force for job lifts. Today, I want to give you a very good outlook of what Darren Braun, Henry's son, showed. And I'll show you why Abbotsford's task force, Abbotsford's police chief, and their leadership is not questionable. And it's not, what did David EBY say, a conspiracy? It shows you they're in organized crime. These filthy men were using that uniform for the beg off the general public, get sympathy from the RCMP, and clean for the politicians. I stand on Gladys Avenue where the Tree of Hope was. Let me explain that Tree of Hope down here. Underneath that tree was the Abbotsford's homeless shelters, where the temples felled them. They were protected from the rain. They were protected from the heat. The scandal of Bruce Bamman hit the newspaper of the chicken manure, unbelievable, because Henry needed Bruce out of the way and everything else so he could join the city with his son for job lifts in the hundreds of millions and threaten and taking advantage of Abbotsford taxpayers. This took a collaborating team, Peter Sparanese, Rob Isaacs, and engineers, but above all, city councils. When I showed you Vicky Hopes was so far up Henry's backside of what she was doing, it was unbelievable. When Henry Brown took the mayorship, he needed the homeless out of here. So here's what he did. Thanks to the RCMP mission, we have it. He ordered bobcats and machineries during the long holidays when it was raining to come in here and dump them on the tents with peat moss and everything where they were sleeping in it, burying them alive. Remember that. It was the RCMP mission said, video film that, Mr. Pelican. Henry needed the homeless out. He lobbied jobs for Ram Funka Diverse, and they were in this big scam and threatening residents. Now, Ross Inhumane, because of Sage, Ram Funk, Henry's partner, rent him on the property, helped him down at Dave Sidhu's newspaper with his superintendents and project managers working the phones, needs these homeless out of here because the activists and everyone. He's in organized crime. When you don't put a stop to that, it leads on to bigger and threats, and this is how it took place with Henry and the Abbotsford police. But Henry ordered, through Ross Inhumane in the city, for the Abbotsford losing police force to come here and make sure the homeless didn't come back. Engineer Rob Isaac and city workers late at night came in here and cut the tree down, the Tree of Hope, at 12 o'clock at night. The only reason you do that is because you've been paid by the developer behind the scenes. Vicky Hopes and the Abbotsford newspaper and the Capriccia newspaper, Andy Sidhu, that tried to scandal me at UFV, failed to write anything about it because they were up the backside of Henry Braun and they were working together, like Darren Braun said, with the council. I'm calling now on David EBY as I run for your mayorship. I'm calling on the NDP to immediately remove these rocks, immediately. Bring in peat, bring in sand, and put a nice, luscious turf here and grass so the homeless can come back and they can have their little parks. That will take them out of the parks that we're fighting to get them out, and they can camp back here. But I'm also asking David EBY to give $100,000 to bring a big tree back here so we can put it here. I want to show you the BC Conservative Corky Neufeld is not lobbying, or is he standing up when I showed him the other day about Archway and then community futures and what's taking place. I want you to look across the train tracks between the two high trains that fly through here, and you can see the homeless been forced between the buffer zones by ROSS Inhumane. Why? Why? They pre-bought the Sage property, changing the zoning from 200 to 400 so Henry's friends could get ahead. They were in it together. The Abbotsford Police failed to do any bylaw. Bylaw refused to do anything while dust was, and they're rushing this job, and it's organized crimes. It took advantage of our vulnerable. It put our vulnerable and our weak in very high risks. And late at night when nobody's looking, and I run these podcasts, the Abbotsford Police and bylaw come down here, they grab them and they throw them out of here and they kick them. We need oversight. We need responsibility. This never happened under other mayors. Let me tell you why, Darren Brown said. Because the other mayors weren't investing their money with partners and developers and contractors and rushing jobs so they could benefit. Rob Funk needs to be stopped. We saw what happened with Ed Fast's son-in-law, and we saw what happened with Peak Homes, and he owns in it. And this is why these leaders didn't stand here. Andy Sidhu, when the scandal came, Andy Sidhu said, Dave Sidhu blocked me at UFB so I couldn't debate Ross Inhumane. My shithole son, he said. Andy Sidhu, let me tell you something, Mr. Andy Sidhu, the RCMP commissioner, so good, so fast, so quick. They said Andy Sidhu owns a newspaper, Mr. Pelican, the Capriccio newspaper. And that bullshit story with Dave Sidhu working with Ross Inhumane and running Ross, Andy Sidhu failed to put you in the newspaper. He failed to mention anything about the South Asians that they had their homes damaged or anything. They were working together as a team. Henry, lock, stock, and barreled owned the Abbotsford A.P.D. How do you do this to the vulnerable and weak? Because Chief Watts is about his paycheck. That's why he ordered his guys to smash my camera, smash my phone, and failed to do any criminal reports. Failed to come out with his little notebook and take any witnesses. We need the NDP to say the BC Conservatives of Abbotsford are not looking after their voters and their residents. And this is outrageous. When the homeless moved from here, they were forced in front of the Abbotsford Police. And what they did is they went up there and figured the Abbotsford Police would protect us. But it was the Abbotsford men and women and the task force and the police force doing this themselves to these vulnerable and weak and laughing and giggling. Did you see what we did? Did you see Henry? Get Rob Funk. Rob Funk donates to the Police Foundation where Henry pointed his brother, Erwin Braun, and Sandy Blue. But this calls for the NDP to say between Archway's 44 million, the attack that Archway never had the homeless's back, the fraud of Abbotsford on Abbotsford taxpayers, but the establishment's ring was all ran by Henry Braun, and I knew that from his son. Take him out and everything collapses, even our police department. You could see this. How can anybody, any human being look away from this? Because Rob Funk needs to have criminal gangs in Abbotsford. There's no such thing as fentanyl hitting my streets or gangs in my streets. I need to get rid of the Abbotsford Police that did this. Nobody can look away from this. Nobody. There's not a God-forsaken person that can look away from this. The churches are begging on me. The people that gotta feed them gotta cross them train tracks. Some of these old seniors that care and look after them said these rocks and this stuff is gouging them. And they sometimes you can't hear these big trains when they're working at night, and they roll in these switches and everything. With the Abbotsford Police, we're investigating a big one, a real big one. The Abbotsford Police have to be gone. This is why we need the RCMP, because this would have never took place. And the RCMP would have known late at night when Peter Sparanese and Rob Isaac, the engineer, and Ross Inhumane came down at 12 o'clock to cut the tree, they would have been charged because it's vandalism. It wasn't done under a proposal. It wasn't that the city had wrote in the newspaper, we're looking at developing this and widen the highway and we need to put rocks in the trees. It wasn't. It was done for pure greed. I believe here's what took place. Henry couldn't make it move because Bruce would have went at Henry when he was dumping the manure. So Henry told Ross, we loaded you. We paid for everything, Ross. You owe us. So you go down there and you do this. The worst thing can happen, Ross. We'll defend you with Vicky Hopes. We'll defend you with Mike DeYoung and Ed Fast, which are all of us are buddies. And with the big scandal, Ross, you got to step down, and then you could flee with everything we feed through the back doors, and you could become a missionary in China like your dad said. We can't let that happen. We can't. We can't let this happen. This is why we run for these positions, to look after the vulnerable and weak. But Corky Neufeld is failing. And he's failing bad because these residents said they went to Corky's Neufeld's office. They've been screaming and yelling about trying to feed the homeless, and a lot of these people now not getting nourishment, not getting water because it's hot, and they can't get through here. So what does it call for? It calls for, under my mayorship, like I'm saying to David Eby, and this is the trains. We haul all these rocks out immediately. Henry probably sold them from one of his gravel pits to make extra surplus money to pay Vicky Hopes maybe through the back door so she can't get any stories against them. Haul them out. Put nice turf here, nice grass here. We put a nice lawn here. We bring them out of the parks where there are, and we put a nice tree here for $100,000 and we put it back. Ron Funk is setting up with the machines just down the road here. He needs to start this illegal digging. We need to stop it. It's threats on residents, but the Abbotsford police are completely weak. We got to get rid of them men and women that were loyal to Henry, and we got to gut them. And we have to go through it. And you can see Chief Watts, he's already leaning. He's leaning because he's getting slapped up the head. It's not that his gun's too heavy. They got caught in organized crime. This is organized crime. This is 100% organized criminal crime for job sites. And you could see that. And this put the vulnerable, and it also puts our residents and our citizens and the people that help the homeless and volunteer to look after them in harm's way. And what's Rob San Diego? Archway Community Services is getting money from Paul Horn to teach English over in Mission. And then we got all these other people. We need to put a stop to Abbotsford residents, but we need to, as bad as it is, call my friends, the BC Conservatives, out on it. Because I do not see that they're doing anything but looking away. Where is the press conference of Corky Neufeld, Bruce Behrman, and Rhiannon Gasper? Right here. I'm live, ladies and gentlemen, Abbotsford, British Columbia.